Seems fair to me. Well, if you don't know what fair is, you can't make it.
Donnybrook is made possible by the members of the Nine Network.
How about that? The Blues won the Stanley Cup. Among the many topics we're going to discuss this week on Donnybrook. Thanks for joining us. Let's meet the panelists who have assembled around the big green table, starting with the media veteran herself, Wendy Weiss from the Big 550 KTRS, and Mr. Bill McClellan joining us from STLtoday.com and the St. Louis Post-Dispatch, Ray Hartman from the Big 550 KTRS and the Riverfront Times, and from the St. Louis American 590, 97.1, and STLmag.com, Mr. Alvin Reed. So, how about that? The team that waited the longest to win the championship in the NHL, the St. Louis Blues. No team won a championship with a bigger gap. Then also, we found out, Ray, that no major league team in North America, and I'm talking about the NHL, the NBA, MLB, NFL, no team has been in last place after a quarter of the season and then come back to win it all. Are we living in the greatest sports story ever?
It's the greatest one we've got going right now, that's for sure. I mean, we're all over the moon. I don't think I'd rank it with the Miracle on Ice. For example, I mean, I think we could get a little carried away. This is a team that was supposed to be very good at the beginning of the year, and wasn't that. There was a lot of teams grouped. There's unbelievable comeback. I'm not going to take anything away from our guys. We're all excited. Well, and as I say, there's a lot of folks, having been around 52 years, to me, and maybe it's because I was a teenager in the stands, the best sporting event to this day that I've ever been in was the double overtime win that got us into the 1968 finals. That was fun. No, you laugh. I think it was great. That was the most fun I ever had, and I've been to Super Bowls.
But you were a teenager.
Well, that may be. I'm saying,
didn't have any
I don't think you know.
responsibilities.
That team was, I think, and it was a team Bob. I loved it. My favorite thing was seeing Bob Plager. And he was on that team, and it was a team of almost none of them were.
But I'm just saying,
it was a great
I'm saying
time.
Find a team that was in last place and then came back. And by the way, with a rookie goaltender, an interim coach.
No question about it. It was a great
and
story.
You got to also admit, when the
story.
team won 3 out of 4 in Boston, that is so improbable. You write about sports in the American, you got to agree with me.
It is a great story.
Hockey is the one sport where this kind of thing can happen. Other sports, you're not going to be that down that low and probably come back, even make the playoffs, let alone win the championship.
You're saying because of the length of the season?
Well, just hockey is a bounce game. It's a hot goalie game. There's just a lot of things that really, really went right for the Blues, and this happens in hockey. Kings were 8th place, barely got in the playoffs the last day. This is about 5 or 6 years ago. Won the Stanley Cup. We've got short memories. This guy over my shoulder here was, stocking the grocery shelves. Some other guy, Trent Green, blows his knee out. Next thing we know, we won the Super Bowl. Not just got there, won it. There are a lot of stories. And Ray, I'm sorry, 68 team. Expansion teams got to play the original 6. If we took the 4 worst baseball teams in Major League Baseball, told them they had to play each other, and then you get to play
the winner.
You get to play from the other side.
Right.
What would happen was not only could that lower bracketed team win some close games, but if they lost every game by 1 run, we would say like that.
They got swept.
They got swept. And
those of us that were there to view it differently, it's fine. I mean, I think Glenn, that first year was a remarkable. And by the way, you're right about Kurt Warner's story. Arguably, individually, was a better, bigger story. But I mean, it's really kind of apples and oranges. This was a great story. We ought to just enjoy it.
This was a really good story, and it was really fun the way everybody got into it. I mean, people who aren't sports fans were wearing Blues hats, and really nice. But if you're going to talk about the greatest sports story,
don't even.
Well, I'm not going to go to the 2016 Cubs, although that's probably number 2. But if you've ever read the book Boys in the Boat about the rowing team in the 1932, I think it was, Olympics, the one in Berlin. You read that, and
The
then
Jesse
you think,
Owens
as good as this
Olympics?
story is, I think
I'll
you're
stick
wrong
with
with
my,
this.
I'll take my 68 Blues.
I will say this.
I'll stick to the
again,
68 Blues.
But I'm talking quantifiable,
Right.
where you actually look at numbers
This
and
is
data.
great.
And this team was in last place, and not only did it make the playoffs, other last place teams have, but no other last place team has ever gone beyond the first round. So I think, at least in the NHL, it's the greatest story.
No, it's not. But
Well, it's
it's a
great-
beautiful story.
It's
but
we're happy. I'm not going
wonderful
to
story.
minimize it. When-
I think it's going to stay with us for a very, very long time. I really do. And I get the feeling, listening to people who know a lot about hockey and who make their living in hockey, like Craig Berube and all of the front office, people who made this team happen. You're trying to catch lightning in a bottle, that there are so many variables, and that the National Hockey League is so unbelievably competitive right now. You don't know what you're going to have or for how long. So I think that we need to just milk
Okay.
every
I
moment.
appreciate this
But
without talking about whether it's
analyze,
the very best story ever.
He asked the question.
I
I do want to say something. I mean, in terms of, I thought just the optics of it, the Enterprise Center and the people who came in for all of those games, the Busch Stadium crowd, the fact that they were sitting in lightning and thunder and torrential downpours and it was just a beautiful.
And I'll throw it in there. Countless, the Cardinals have won so many times. The Rams went twice. None of that. Ever since I was a kid, I've never been kind of misty when they won a championship, a team from here. I was. Last night.
Because your
something.
grandfather
I
was-
disagree respectfully with you. I don't think it's going to resonate that long, and the reason I say that is because of the Rams. We were in the Super Bowl twice with the Rams, and wow, did things turn around quickly.
What?
I'm talking about in this city with the Rams. Before you knew it,
That's
no
it.
one was showing up. The team was in last
Are
place.
the Blues going to move to Saskatchewan
Who
again?
knows?
Now, I thought-
Sports
wait a minute.
victories are fleeting.
Hey, wait a
They're
minute,
here
Charlie.
today and gone
Okay.
tomorrow.
Charlie, I agree with
Well,
that, but
the
let me
Duke
say
of
something.
Darkness has spoken.
I'm telling you the truth.
Can't
The truth
compare
hurts. Live
You
with
can't
it.
compare Stan Kroenke to Tom Stillman. I'm sorry. There's
At least
not-
not
No, I'm
yet.
comparing Stan Kroenke. I'm comparing Tom Stillman to Georgia Frontier. Things change.
Well,
People change.
Speaking of Stillman, I thought what was interesting about him is that he's there at the games greeting fans and stuff, and I think one of the things that he should get credit for is he was not hogging the stage. He was totally
No.
I think he
not
was
at all.
on the stage. He let the players and the coaches get the credit, which I
that's
saw a
true.
lot of class. I mean, I think I'm not one of these people that says, "Oh, they've made some sacrifice." I mean, financially, these guys have done just fine for
Oh, yeah.
themselves, as they should. But the point is, and I obviously have my views about. I don't think public money should go to him and all that, but I do think he should have a lot of class. And as far as the you got to remember the hardcore Blues fans, and you can make fun of us from '68. The hardcore Blues fans were there and will be there. So I don't think the Blues are going to have some fall off. Now, obviously,
No, I'm not saying fall off.
Well, sure,
I'm just
people are
saying-
going to get mad at him if they lose next year. Sure, that's
The Blues
sports.
fans will
They
remember
know
this
that.
forever, just as Cardinal
This-
fans remember
right.
1964.
Right.
But the glow doesn't last.
It's,
Well, of
I
course
think
not.
the
Not if
glow.
they end
I
up
think
being
that I disagree with you. I think the glow
gonna last
is
a
going to
while.
be glowy for a.
Oh yeah, just ask
for a
Kurt
while.
Warner how we got rid of him when 3 years later.
That was Mike
I mean,
Martz.
come on.
That was Mike
No,
Martz.
no,
that was
that's
not
what
the. That was not
happened.
the city of
No,
St. Louis.
No, the
No.
city was against him.
Charlie's right.
They
Because
turned
of
on him,
Brenda.
and they turned on his wife Brenda.
Charlie's
and
right.
Why?
They did.
That's my question.
No, because he
Why?
was hurt, and it made sound policy financially and professionally to let him go.
yeah.
That's how the National Football League
And then
works.
you know what happened? Next thing you know, we're watching him in the Super Bowl for Arizona.
That's
Well,
how it
and also
happens.
we gave
Yeah.
him a hard time for playing her, which in the media, which I have to say though, I don't think
did.
I think this one. And it's interesting. We're not the only city in this state in this situation. Vancouver and Buffalo have been around just 3 years less than us and have never won a Stanley Cup, and we ain't crying tears for them. So but it's a great story.
Well, Vancouver
for us.
doesn't need anybody to cry tears for it. It's doing great.
yeah,
It's
Vancouver's
growing.
okay.
It's a beautiful place.
No, I'm talking about their
Buffalo,
fans.
On the other hand,
Their
I
fans,
know
you
what
can
you're saying.
imagine how they're feeling. I mean,
No,
they care about hockey more than we do.
Honestly, I
Buffalo,
think
I
that
feel
the
bad.
story
How can you
is.
say that?
Do you think the story is
Vancouver?
bigger? Do you think the story?
Hardcore Blues fans would tell you they are every bit the
Canadians
fans
care more
that
than
Canadians,
Americans about hockey.
Okay,
I'm sorry.
Well,
I'm
that's-
saying
It's their
core.
game.
I understand that, Ray, but I'm saying
I'm one of the Blues
core.
fans. I get it.
We know you were there in
I
1968.
get it.
I'm saying that core Blues fans are every bit as invested in this team
Well-
as anybody north of the border.
But the
A.
community
You know how
in
much a ticket
Vancouver
cost in
is more
1968?
vested.
like $4.
Yep, $3.75.
Yeah,
So-
$4.
Well,
No, there was always
don't you
250.
agree, though, that this victory was all the sweeter because we've had some rough times with the
Yes.
Rams, with Ferguson, with floods and everything else?
But one of the
Time
right-
out. Can we please stop with this Ferguson mess? Good God, they won the championship and had nothing to do with Ferguson. If we're still carrying around the whatever happened in Ferguson, we need to be ashamed of ourselves.
Well, I
I'm
think
sick
the
of
New
it.
York Times, the New York Times has certainly reminded us about Ferguson at every turn. The national press reminds us about Ferguson at every turn. I think people just like to say,
I didn't
"Whew,"
see that much
you know,
of that
maybe
with the context
after
of this.
after Ferguson fatigue, and we feel like we just needed to move.
Well, the New York Times is a fine paper that has fine correspondence.
Stringers.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Yes, they
You
do.
one of them.
Just leave it alone.
Leave the New York Times.
Yeah, I
alone.
think that the media, and one of the things I heard people say, and I thought they were too thin-skinned about what announcers said or media said.
Yes.
I think this, whatever you want to say about everything else, on balance, St. Louis sports fans were portrayed very well, and St. Louis was portrayed very well, and I didn't get the sense that there was a lot of asterisks in that. Now, admittedly, it's in the context of sports, but I thought, well, first of all, we comported ourselves well, but I
Yes.
also think that St. Louis, this was a very good thing for the community.
And
it
Chris
brought a lot
Kerber,
of people
the
together.
last
And it
20
was
seconds,
emotional for people.
the last 20 seconds, Chris Kerber, it was the best thing since Jack Buck's Go Crazy Folks. It was absolutely beautiful.
His call.
His call.
And
That
that's-
last
it was-
20 seconds was just absolutely
It was a
amazing.
nice
We just
call.
we feel like I just feel like this is such a special moment where all of the tumblers fell into place, and we just need to enjoy it.
I
and
agree.
blow
I
agree
as
with that,
long
too.
as we want
Right.
to.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Absolutely.
well, the big parade on Saturday, so we'll see how that works out. I'm
think
sure it's
it-
going to be great. Okay, let's move on to other stories because man does not live by sports alone. Well, not actually around here. That's all we care about, it seems. But let's talk about Calverton Park, where tragically an 11-month-old was found dead in the car after being left there for between 15 and 16 hours by her parents, Bill. And as it turns out, Wesley Bell, the new prosecutor for St. Louis County, has charged the parents with the death of the baby because they basically erred. It was a terrible, terrible error, but the child is dead, and the prosecutor thinks that they should pay for it. What do you think about that? Manslaughter charges?
No, unless there's some information that I am not privy to, which is very possible. I think it's a bad decision. I remember when the doctor and his wife at Barnes Hospital mistakenly left their little baby in the car seat. The husband thought that she had it, and she thought that he had the child. There were no charges there. And I thought, well, that's understandable. I mean, this was a tragic mistake, and these people are suffering more than the system could make them suffer. And I look at the same way at Calverton Park. As long as the information that we have is right, that he thought she had the child and she thought he had the child, and they realized too late that no one did, I don't think they should be criminally charged.
I think there has to be more to this story. There has to be, because of what you've just outlined. I mean, they've lost a baby, and I don't think Wesley Bell came into office with sort of this vengeance is mine, reputation. So I think there must be more.
It's not vengeance. It's punishing people for dereliction of duty, for
But
extreme
if there
negligence.
is no difference between the physicians from
But
Barnes
that's different.
and
You
the,
can't compare that. That was 25 years ago. With
No,
all the
it
respect.
wasn't.
No, it wasn't.
No,
20 years ago.
No,
I don't think
Yeah,
so.
it was quite some time
I'd say
ago.
7, 8 years
No,
ago.
no, much
10.
longer than
I'd
that.
say
No,
10.
no.
I'd say 10 years
Look it
ago,
up.
but-
It was longer than that. And
I don't think so.
I don't think so.
Well,
I was
we'll
on
look
the
it up.
show.
We'll look it up.
Okay.
However, different prosecutors, different situation. One was,
I don't think it's about the prosecutor. I think it's a question, and I don't agree with you saying it was a bad decision because we don't have. You made one point, which is we don't have the facts, and so we don't know.
I'm
if
saying
it-
based on what we know, I think it was
okay,
a bad
all
decision.
right, that's fair. I generally am on the side of not prosecuting parents in these situations because they're in their own prison, and that's my natural disposition. But to Wendy's point, we don't know. 16 hours is a long time.
Terrible.
We don't. I don't think it's fair to try to start comparing it to other cases.
I do.
When we don't
I do.
have.
I got another comparison,
I don't
too.
think
Well,
we
give
don't
me
have the
some.
facts.
Socioeconomic-
You're comparing two sets
There
of
you
facts.
go.
You don't even know. Well, that may be one of it, but we don't know. We don't know
No,
what
you
the
just
facts
blew by
are.
that. Look,
No,
if
I don't know.
if
I don't
these
think
were-
Wesley
Well,
Bell.
let Alvin respond.
If Wesley Bell had to take on
Right.
two doctors who were going to lawyer up big time, he probably wouldn't have charged them with a crime.
don't know.
I'm sorry, that's the truth.
I don't
And
think
then
that's
two,
How do you know that's the truth?
I disagree with that.
How do you arrive at that?
Wesley
I'm
Bell
saying
would
that's
not.
what I think.
disagree with that.
But I will also say this, that never mind, you made me lose my train of thought.
Sorry, I don't think county prosecutors care about
Oh, no,
people
I know what I was going to
lawyering.
say. All right, I'm not disagreeing with the decision that he made, but you mean to tell me you could sexually assault a woman, then kill a woman in cold blood that wouldn't, let you do it, and then not be charged with the death penalty by the same prosecutor, but yet you're going to...
Remember which case?
This is the Catholic supply store killer and just crazy man. And they're pursuing the death penalty on him.
Now he's being charged, Alvin, just not with the death penalty, and the
I
prosecutor
understand.
ran.
That's the
the
whole-
prosecutor ran
what
saying
I'm
we
saying
don't.
is that's ironic to me. I'm not saying that I disagree with his decision, but how are you going to? Nobody's going to get the death penalty in my courts. But I'm going to throw the book at something like this?
It's a totally different issue.
Yeah,
think that
I would
he's
say
against
totally
the
different
death
issue,
penalty.
too.
He's against the death penalty, but my point is, and all I'm saying is, I would not assume that Wesley Bell would be intimidated by somebody's money or whatever.
Oh, please, all prosecutors are in some way, shape, or form. Why do rich
he just
people
got
not
it.
get charged with the same crimes that poor people do?
Wesley, he's only been in office a few months, and show me an example where he's backed off of somebody.
Well, I just
don't know. I think I think he'd be less likely
All right,
than other prosecutors. My point is this: I generally prefer not to see these people get charged, and I agree with that. But I think we need more facts before we start trying to compare.
And
That's all I'm
I
saying.
agree and I disagree. I think people should be accountable for their actions, especially when it results in
It is the law.
death of a human being.
Right. All right.
So, okay, what we're going to do is ask you to join us after this discussion. Don't you want to meet us in person? And you can do that September the 26th. Promise we'll be on better behavior. And that's going to be at Donnie Bash at the Sheldon. Here are some of the details.
I want to take this opportunity to invite you to become the next new member of the 9 Network. And when you do, when you join us at just the $5 monthly contribution, you will get 1 ticket to see Donnie Bash live and in person. That's coming up on September 26th at the Sheldon Concert Hall. That is a live broadcast of the show. You'll get to meet the cast before and after the live broadcast. You can talk to them about all the things you've always wanted to ask them. That's yours. 1 ticket to see Donnie Bash live and in person on September 26th with a $5 ongoing monthly contribution. Now, better yet, join us at the $12 level, and then you can get yourself a date because you'll get 2 tickets to see Donnie Bash live and in person. Plus, you'll get the new 9 mug, and that's a handful. That's a good mug, and that is you can get rid of that old I Love Elvis mug or whatever that silly thing is you have at work. Take your 9 mug to work and let people see that you put your money where your mind is, and that's on quality television here at the 9 Network. That's yours with a $12 ongoing monthly contribution to the 9 Network. You'll get 2 tickets to Donnie Bash coming up on September 26th at the Sheldon, plus the 9 mug. Father's Day's right around the corner. Wouldn't be a bad idea to make that a very special gift. Call us right now and support the 9 Network.
Not only right around the corner, but Sunday, the most important holiday of the year, Father's Day.
The highest.
And so if you're watching, kids, make sure you're buying lots of items for me. But hey, this is a lot of fun. It's the Sheldon get-together that we have every year. I think it's definitely, truth be told, Donnie Bash is the highlight of the 9 Network calendar, at least for the Donnybrook crowd. And we like to meet people. And what are you laughing at?
Well, we're a small part
You
of the
don't let us.
calendar,
Yeah, you don't let us out very
I think
often.
I mean, it is our highlight.
it is.
It is, no
Yeah.
question.
And we are, it's within a couple weeks of the start of the hockey season. Maybe we can arrange to have the Stanley Cup.
We can talk
think-
about
Oh,
that's right.
Did you say?
Hey,
can
my
you-
mouth has written a check that
you said
my
you-
behind has got to
you
cash.
said- oh, you
I'm
were
serious.
arranging to- okay,
All right,
I-
hey,
that's right, you
Special
did
guest
say that.
star.
My daughter, Lorna, called me last night when the Blues
I'm
won,
sorry, I forgot.
and she said, I expect to see the Stanley Cup at Donnie Bash, as Alvin suggested.
I forgot. I apologize. You did say you were going to.
Me and the guy on the wall. We put the guy on the wall. We won the Stanley Cup.
Okay.
It's
That would
once
be
again,
very much
it's
fun.
all falling into place.
That would be better.
So,
Team of Destiny.
Team
it
of
will
Destiny.
be right
That
here,
will make it the
blocking
greatest sports story
of you.
That would be a serious. That'd be the best Donnie
So you
Brooks
better get your
sports story
tickets.
ever.
Get
Okay.
your tickets.
We're going to have the top minds working on that.
It is a good foundation.
Maybe a phone call to Bernie Federko, or you'll work your magic one way or the other. So to see the Stanley Cup, you're going to need to call that number on your screen. And my goodness,
We're all going to jail. You realize
I'm
that,
not- we're
right?
not.
We're all going to jail.
we're going to try our best. We can't guarantee anything at this point, but we'll do our best to get the Stanley Cup there. It travels around. You made a good point last week. It's always around the country. It doesn't seem like it's behind lock and key too much.
Well, they have a traveling one, I think, don't they? They have the one
No.
that stays in the Hall of Fame, and the other.
Yeah.
They have a second. They have a replica that I think.
I mean, horses eat oats out of it. I think it could.
I think
come
they
to
have a
Donnie
replica.
Bash.
But it is it's still a cute, cool thing. It weighs 34 pounds or something.
exactly.
Maybe some of. Well, no, I won't say that.
Say it,
I was
Wendy.
going to
Say
say
it.
maybe one of our audience members could sit in it and have like a little picture taken, like the babies and the nurseries and the hospitals.
Let's move on to something else.
Okay, that's why I didn't want to say it.
All right.
You shouldn't have listened to us.
I
Wendy.
know you're right.
Let's move along, and then we'll thank you in advance for joining us on September 26th. Okay, Alvin Reed, we're going to move from the Stanley Cup to cash bail. Ben Cohen of Ben and Jerry's came to St. Louis, and I think he might still be driving around giving out free ice cream and encouraging people to do a couple of things. Number one, close the medium security prison, the Hall Street jail, I should say, in North St. Louis, and eliminate cash bail. And that is where some individuals languish in the medium security jail because they can't meet the cash bail requirements that are imposed upon them by the court, sometimes for small offenses that are not violent. So, Ben Cohen and others, Tashara Jones, the treasurer, and others have been behind this move to eliminate cash bail because people who are charged with a crime, if they got money, no problem with the bail. If you don't have money, you can't meet it, so you stay there in sometimes terrible conditions. What's your opinion here?
Well, I'm wary of just targeting cash bail and say like this should not be done or this is unfair. I think that in life you put yourself in situations that may not be good, okay? And you might want to think about that before you commit any kind of crime. Now, I know there are probably some people down there that did not deserve that, but in the greater scheme, look, bail needs to be set, and sometimes bail needs to be set higher than what you think you might have gotten, but in my mind, that's too bad. Listen, the problem in North St. Louis is not only too much crime, it's too many criminals. And if you could take them off the street until their trial and then send them off to prison, all the better. Cash bail is not a problem all over the community, not only because people have the money to pay it, because maybe the majority of people in these communities aren't criminals. Okay. I mean, when you're going to talk about getting tough on crime, it does not mean beating up people, and it does mean shooting them unjustly, but once you've done something wrong,
but these are folks who are accused.
Right.
They haven't even had their
They haven't had their day in court, and they
Let me
lose
just-
their jobs. I mean, if they're in there long enough, they lose their jobs, and it starts. I just think it perpetuates a cycle that's already an issue.
I think that this is a national movement about mass incarceration, and in particular, well, but it's part of the same concern, and what I think is clear is bail has two considerations. One is the person a danger to the community? And two is, are they a flight risk? Are they going to come to trial? Those are the two things that should go into bail. And anyone who falls into the category based on a case-by-case basis of being a danger to the community, their bail should be set so that they can't get out. The problem we have now is that poor people are just en masse, basically incarcerated without a trial, pending their trial, based on the fact that they're poor, not based on any kind of individualized look at whether they're a danger, and that's the problem.
Didn't Tony Messenger just win a Pulitzer for this kind of?
That's the concern.
No,
that's slightly different.
He had a slightly different angle. There's a lot. It's all on the
I
same.
think
Similar.
there's an abuse, and some people, young kids go to jail on a burglary charge and they can't get out, and they ended up pleading guilty just to get out. Right. These things happen. But on the other hand, to have no bail, wow. I mean, we're always talking about how the community has to come forward and tell on these people. And, people in the community say, why would I tell on him, report him, when he's going to be out there tomorrow, across the street from me? I'm not, and the cops are always saying, no, we'll put him away. And now if we say, well, there's no bail, these people
I didn't say no bail. I said individually, you set the bail based on the danger of the person.
Sometimes the bail is set high, and they can't get out.
What's happening now is when you're poor, there's a general standard at this point of setting a cash bail that none of the poor people, regardless of the circumstance of whether they're actually a danger, or end up in mass incarceration.
But it's not just that.
That's my point.
Audrey Fleisig is the federal judge who looked into this, and she said that it doesn't meet constitutional standards, largely because they haven't allowed the defendants to speak, to talk to the judge and tell them if they have any money. Number two, they're not getting timely hearings. And so she said, you got to run these cases through so these people can have their day in court,
That's
so
what
to
I'm
speak.
saying.
But, the federal system doesn't really have bail. What they say is, A, you're not going to get out, or if you do get out, you can get like an ankle bracelet, which we should be doing more locally, even though apparently you can take those off. But the other thing is, you tell your family, hey, you're going to sign a bond, and if you don't show up for court, we're going to take away their car or their house. And so people who are cash poor can still get out on the federal case because they can have their family sign this bond. So I think we should consider some of those ideas at the local level.
We have statewide referendums. I listen, in high crime areas, if you had a referendum against the registered voters in those areas, cash bail, no cash bail, they say cash bail. All right, because I want them off the street.
Well, that's a fact, because a lot of those people who would be out on cash bail aren't going into my neighborhood or your neighborhood.
They're going
They're going probably into neighborhoods where we never go.
They still have a right to the individual adjudication of their case.
Do they have a right to terrorize their neighborhood?
No, but they have a right. They have a presumption of innocence, Alvin.
Let's take steps to end that.
What constitutional standard was met when the Bail Project gave the domestic abuser a $5,000 bail, and he beat his wife to death, allegedly?
Well,
again, that's on the judge if you wanted to go.
Well, what happened in Maryland, when they did eliminate cash bail, they found that more judges decided not to offer bail.
That's okay if you look at the individual circumstance and you say this person's dangerous, then don't let him out. That's fine.
Well, but then they'll still languish in
everybody that's poor in on a $5,000 cash bail.
They'll still languish in the workhouse, which is no day at the beach.
People should not be serve their time before you've even adjudicated a case. That's what's going on.
Now, let me ask you a similar topic, Ray, because it was just a terrible story this week while we were all celebrating our Stanley Cup success. Unfortunately, we lost 4 kids in 5 days to gunfire. A 16-year-old on Saturday, a 3-year-old on Sunday, an 11-year-old on Monday, and then on Wednesday, another 16-year-old. And I'm kind of thinking that we need some huge blue ribbon panel, headed up by our Mark Wrighton or somebody, August Bush the third, to look into what the heck is going on, because...
Well, we need to do something. We can all sit here as armchair quarterbacks. I will say this. Our team, the Blues are our team, everybody, and the Cardinals are our team. This is our problem as a community, everybody. And if you can't just take, we all, as much as we're all excited about the great things happen with the Blues, the fact is this tragedy in St. Louis continues, and I wish I could sit here and say I got some answer. So we need as a community to own this.
That kind of thing makes me,
I don't know.
That kind of thing makes me absolutely crazy, because you're not taking away from, the people feel completely heartsick when they see a picture of this baby, this beautiful little girl, eating a slice of pizza on the street corner with her community surrounding her. Nobody thinks, whose mind would think that there's going to be a drive-by shooting? It doesn't mean that the people who live away from the intersection where she was killed in South St. Louis, that they don't care about it, because they're... But I'm
saying
you seem to be saying that.
I'm saying as a region,
when we're winning the
Stanley
Cup, we're a community, and when the baby gets killed, we're not a community, and we are. But there's a sense of complete hopelessness.
I think it's we need to look regionally at what resources we have as a community, the same kind that we have when the Blues win,
Right,
as
but
a
we-
region to address this problem.
but you-
We
and
need
not just
money
ask the city
for
government.
police officers.
Yeah, it's not a regional problem, right?
Well, I think it is.
It's a problem in certain neighborhoods.
Right, but it's the
and
solution
it's
needs to come
disingenuous to pretend
from our
that it's regional.
I think we need to address regional resources to solve it because it's not just.
I think we need to
Well,
go
actually,
into the neighborhoods in question
With
with
that, maybe?
tanks if we need. I mean,
Well,
if
whatever it
necessary,
is.
to save the lives of these innocent children and innocent senior citizens and everybody.
And right, and it's like, I mean, and I'm not trying to be facetious here, but we want to do something, but as long as it involves cash bail, no way. I mean, so what is that? You know, if somebody comes up with that, I think this is a solution to the problem.
Cash bail
All right,
isn't so-
and it's like, well, no, I want to do something, but we can't do that.
Cash bail hasn't solved the problem.
Well, it might help.
Well, now the cash bail wouldn't be available to a violent
Right.
offender,
I don't
so there's
think-
that. But
of course
you know,
not.
but Ray's kind of right. I mean, if you're living in Wentzville, you should be concerned about what's going on. And in fact, I would say in Jefferson City, I think Jefferson City's to blame because they have turned a true blind eye to the crime.
No, Charlie, the
of
guy
St.
in
Louis.
the guy in the car that drove by the little girl and shot her. He's to blame, or
Everybody
she's to
understands
blame.
that, Wendy, but the question
No,
is,
he
where
just
are
said
the
it's Jefferson
resources?
City's
the
fault.
question is where. We all agree about that. The question is, where are the resources going to come? And too often we say, well, city, you got to figure it
What
out.
resources are you
I
talking
don't know.
about?
I
Ray?
think
Like,
that
what's-
might be a good
what's the
subject
plan?
of the Mark Wrighton panel.
We don't need
Well, we already have the
another
Ferguson
blue ribbon
Commission.
panel.
Well, I don't know. I think we need, as a community, as a region, to address this problem.
I don't
do
know.
not
I
think
just
we can
this just sounds like
isolate it on the city
Congress is
government.
debating
That's
how to fight
right,
the war.
right.
Meanwhile, I'm
Well-
off in the jungle someplace. I said, you know what? I need some bullets and some more guns and some more
meanwhile,
people.
we're
And a
gonna let
Kevlar
criminals
vest.
out.
Yeah, but meanwhile,
Okay.
yeah.
Well, you know, I think there's a lot of things going on. I think that in some of our communities, they're really separate. They're suffering. Nobody goes in there. Nobody cares about them. And that's got to change. I mean, I shouldn't say nobody. There's clergy and social services. But by and large, you know, we don't rally around the poorest neighborhoods that are most effective, where there's so much suffering, you know, with the kids and the families. So, and I think that, you know, the governor is a good guy. If he's pushed by certain people, he might address it, and they might say, okay, let's treat it like a disease. What is causing this? And then get to those causes, and whether it's locking up guns in a car, like they do in Massachusetts, you can't just leave your gun underneath the seat.
But
have
if
to
you
have it
do
locked
and you
box.
get thrown in jail for it, we'll let you right out.
Well,
because
right.
we
Nobody
don't want
is
we don't
saying
want this mass incarceration.
Okay, it starts with education. So let's let every kid from the city of St. Louis go to school wherever they want to, and we'll all pay for it. Okay. Now, how far is that going to go? It's not going to go anywhere. All right. Ultimately, maybe so. But tonight, I need to be protected from these killers running around my neighborhood. So let's talk about tonight before we talk about 10 years from now. You know, it's.
But you basically apply that. I'm saying that we just let everybody go. If they're violent, they need to be incarcerated. There isn't any question until trial.
I thought there was some question because
There's no. What it is you don't just take everybody you arrest and presume their guilt.
Bail. There's bail made available for violent criminals. I mean, if you're a rich person and you're accused of shooting somebody, you get bail. And now what they're saying is, well, then everybody gets that.
not what we're saying.
Everybody gets that.
You should set
All right,
bail
we're going
beyond
to
their ability
reverse
to pay
order.
it if they're violent.
What I'm going to do is bring up another topic of law enforcement, and then you guys can respond to that. Alvin, I'm going to start with you. The Attorney General report came out, and the report comes out every year. And this time it indicates that African-American drivers are 91% more likely to be pulled over than their white counterparts. Actually, much more than Asian and Latino drivers as well. I say two things. Number one, I don't believe that police officers can identify the race of the driver. That's number one. Number two, isn't it possible that certain groups have different, driving patterns and behaviors? Maybe certain groups of people, African Americans, who might be on the lower level of income, in our area anyway, may not be updating their plates. They may not be paying the sales tax, the property tax, and updating the insurance. Isn't that possible?
Well, I mean, I guess it's possible, but this just smacks of it can't be. The police actually maybe having a bias against black people because thinking like this will be a big bust or maybe, oh, they've got to be dangerous or whatever. I mean, it's just straight, just bias. Now, you could call it racism. You can call it whatever it is. But 91% year after year after year, Look, police throughout the United States of America think they're going to hit the jackpot by pulling over more black people than white people. They also know they're not going to run into attorneys for just stopping people and whatnot. That's why it's done. That's why it goes on and on and on.
But hang on, there's no more jackpot after HB 5 or whatever it was passed a couple of years ago. Communities can't make money off these stops anymore. So there is no jackpot.
No, it might be my personal jackpot.
Right. You're not talking about finances.
I'm talking about me. I'm a police officer. The more black people I stop, I think the more arrests I'll make. Doesn't play out. The more black people's cars I search, I'm more likely to find contraband. Doesn't weigh out factually. You're much more likely to find contraband in a white person's car. That 91% less you're stopping.
And I think there's an answer for that. And that is if there are warrants out for that car that gives you, the police officer, the responding officer, the opportunity to search the car. So it's possible that African Americans have more warrants than their Asian counterparts, for example.
But that doesn't necessarily mean that we're talking about 91%. If it was 52-48, 60-40, whatever. 91.
Okay. I still, if we could
Charlie.
circle back to your first assertion, which was that law enforcement officers cannot recognize the race of the person behind the steering wheel. I can distinguish between the races. I cannot. You know, I mean,
when you're driving behind. When you're driving behind.
When I'm driving behind them, if they have their arm on the steering wheel, yeah. If they have a hand on the steering wheel, I mean, I can tell whether that is a African American hand or a white hand. I can't break it down into demographic groups, but yeah, absolutely I can, and I think that it's laughable.
Driving while black is a reality. The shocking thing about these numbers is they don't change no matter how much we talk about it. African Americans have to have the talk with their kids. They have to have the talk with their kids about what happens if you get pulled over.
But that's different.
White people do not have to have the same talk with their kids about keeping your hands up and all the other stuff you have to do in sight. And the fact is, driving while black is real, and it is not changing.
But hang on a second, Ray. Driving while black is being pulled over for no reason. This report doesn't indicate that people are being pulled over for no reason. In fact, they don't tell us why people are being pulled over, which I think is important to know.
That would help.
Well, Charlie, the numbers, I think Alvin makes such a good point. The numbers are so clear and strong that it goes beyond any coincidence.
And it happens in every community.
Yeah.
We know that prisons are disproportionately African American. Are you saying that those individuals should not be there either?
Well, what I'm saying is that, black people commit proportionally more crime per capita, whatever, that number. That does not play out into people who drive cars.
Isn't it the same thing?
No, it's not, because the majority of black people who are in prison come from a lower economic area. The majority of people who are stopped, it's all over America. It's my neighborhood, it's your neighborhood.
And what I'm saying is people from a lower economic area might have more expired plates.
That might be, but that will not take it to 91%. See, I'm not arguing with what number is. I'm saying if it's 91%, something's going on that ain't right.
All right. We need another blue ribbon panel. Where's Mark Wrighton when you need him? Okay. We're going to invite you to join us for Donnie Bash this year, September 26th. It's a fun time, we promise. Here are some of the details.
Well, any program that has lasted 33 years on the 9 Network must be doing something right. Hi, I'm Marianne Carson, and we are inviting you to become the next member of the 9 Network, and we have great ways of saying thank you. Coming up in September, it's our annual Donnie Bash. The date, Thursday, September 26th, the place, the Sheldon Concert Hall. And there are several ways that you can be right there in the audience for this live broadcast. First of all, if you become a sustaining member of the 9 Network at just $5 a month, we will send you a ticket to Donnie Bash. And if you would like instead, at $5 a month as a sustainer, you may have the 9 mug. This is a very handsome, this is a new mug, ceramic with the 9 Network logo. But we think that the very best way to enjoy Donnie Bash is by becoming a sustaining member of the 9 Network at $12 a month, because with that, you'll receive 2 tickets to Donnie Bash, and you will also receive the beautiful ceramic mug. So what a great way to celebrate your membership to the 9 Network. A lot of folks say, you know, if you've never been to Donnie Bash, You don't know what you're missing. Now, if you have been to Donnie Bash and you know how wonderful it is, come on back. Don't be shy. The folks from Donnybrook really enjoy seeing people back for a second and third time. I think that Wendy Weiss was talking about a couple that they do this every year for their anniversary. They celebrate great television and also their membership to the 9 Network. Give us a call at 1-800-568-9099 or go online at 9net.org. That's NINEnet.org.
For picking up that phone and calling. It's our big fundraiser of the year, and it allows us to bring you this program commercial free. So thank you, and I think it's a really good time too. It's a fundraiser that includes schmoozing beforehand and then the actual live presentation of Donnybrook on the 9 Network, followed by more schmoozing. And I think it's why you don't like
I don't know, schmoozing.
schmoozing.
Jerry Berger.
Okay.
Yeah.
Schmoozing's a,
Yeah.
it's a good word.
Socialize.
Socializing.
Yeah,
Socializing.
socialize.
And Charlie, you're a good person to socialize. Some of the viewers might look and say, he's mean tonight, but you're not
You're
normally
not.
mean.
You're
He's
very.
also a good person to schmooze with. It's all good.
Nice schmoozer.
Yeah.
I believe the viewers are saying, I want to schmooze with
Charlie,
Charlie.
it's those other.
And the Stanley Cup.
I think the viewers are worried that these two go, lock him up. Throw away the key.
I am not anti-schmooze. I'm good, but Charlie, I think schmooze is a correct usage of the word.
It is an incredibly fun night. If you have never done this, if you have a father that you love who does not need another necktie on Sunday, and they don't need any more neckties, they don't need any more aftershave, they've got enough Old Spice, buy them a ticket for Donnie Bash, because this is really
And buy yourself one
really
too. Don't make
fun.
him come by himself.
Right,
You know,
right.
Yeah, so we're supporting the 9 Network, which we all are grateful to for the run we've had and for all the great programs. We're still one of the top PBS, maybe the top. Certainly pound for
Number
pound, the top.
Let's not get into that pound for pound thing.
Right.
Whatever you call
Except for
it.
the,
And let's
except
not
for
get
the
in-
68 team.
Yeah. Is it the best Donnie
It's the
Bash?
best.
It is the
I'm going to
best
say
time.
that we have the best PBS station in the country.
Yes,
And
we do.
and
Yes,
to
we
go
do.
with the best 68 sports story
But
ever.
the reason why it is so much fun for us is seeing the same people come back, as you said, 7, 8, 9, 10 years in a row and beyond. They make it an annual fall thing, and it's a great time.
Well,
And
do you
you'll
remember
leave-
last time somebody asked who's been here to every Donnie Bash? And my wife raised her hand.
Oh, yeah.
Mary the
And
Ringer.
The Sheldon is such a great place.
It is.
Such a
It's just
classic.
a fun night.
So thanks for picking up the phone and joining us in September. Bill McClellan, I want to ask you about the airport, Lambert, which, it's been the subject of some controversy. I don't even know why, because it seems like a no-brainer to refinance the bonds so that you can save money. But Lyda Krewson, the mayor, seems to be stalling when it comes to signing the paperwork that'll refinance the money that Lambert owes so that the city, which operates Lambert, can save some money. And Darlene Green, the comptroller, is pulling her hair out now to defend.
Pulling Lyda's hair.
Well, maybe both, yeah.
Darlene is pulling Darlene's hair out.
Sounds like the school board in the old days.
The comptroller, along with the backing of the airlines, wants those bonds, all the refinancing paperwork done. But does the mayor have a point? Look, the numbers on the paperwork have changed, and the comptroller herself didn't even show up to the most recent meeting. So,
Well, the only point that I see very clearly is when the airlines, Southwest and American, write letters to the mayor saying, please stop and just take what the comptroller's telling you to take. I mean, wow, that's pretty impressive that the airlines have to get involved. I think the mayor's doing the right thing now, saying, okay, I'm going to take it.
Well, and I think this is more about Mayor Rex Singfield, frankly, and the shadow government that runs this town. And this is about, I wrote about it, ching ching, in Riverfront Times this week, and you could, this is about airport privatization. And Darlene Green is the one person citywide, along with Kara Spencer, the alderman, who has had the courage, really, and decency to stand up to this. It's a bad idea, and it's be one thing. Francis Slay really hurt his legacy with this. He was in office 16 years. 26 days before the end of 16 years is when we first heard this idea. If this community wants to discuss airport privatization, that's one thing. But what we've done instead is Rex Sinquefield is supposedly funding a study where he gets his money back if the answer is yes, which is just unbelievable. And I personally, I think it's just a bad idea on the face of it. But if it has merit, then put it out there and let the public.
I agree, but I thought that we were talking about the bonds.
Well, but that's part of the. That's what this is.
What Ray is saying,
that.
and he might be right, is
She's
that the mayor is
that.
dragging her feet so that the financials for the airport look bad.
That's what she's
so
doing.
everyone is
yes,
so
absolutely.
So
everyone's going to say, "Oh, well, we got to
like,
privatize it.
yeah,
Look
we
how
have to do
bad the
something."
numbers are."
And Rhonda
Nebrigi.
has done a good job running the airport, and they're doing everything they can to make the airport look bad so they can privatize it, I think.
And actually, the airport's ridership is up, and its financials are pretty good. And what's amazing to me is that we don't even have any public hearings on this.
Well, did anybody in the public say anything about, hey, one way we could solve our financial woes would be if we privatize the airport? No one said that.
No,
exactly.
It really does.
Including the airlines.
Yeah, it really does sound like a mini Better Together, where some highfalutin people put forth this idea that nobody, person, and others have fallen in line for whatever
as they
reason,
always
as they always
do.
do. But this is really just a minuscule number of people trying to make a decision that will impact this entire region. It's like Ray just said, this is a bad idea. And Mayor Crewson and this bonds thing, this, like I say, this is just ridiculous. But a lot of ridiculous stuff is coming out of the room too.
Tony Messenger's column earlier this week, it really seemed to be that they are using. We are the lab rat. Why are we a lab? Why are we the perennial lab rat in Rex Sinquefield's world? It's Better Together. It's outstate running our metropolitan area. It's a privatized airport. We're going to be the case study. They're going to use us in all of the brochures. Hey, St. Louis. St. Louis they're on board with this privatization for the future at their airport.
I don't know if that would be very impressive to the rest of the country.
But they would be
the first is on board with it.
Us in Puerto Rico.
Puerto Rico is the only privatized airport.
White Plains.
A major.
Europe.
We would be the first major airport to do it. But the interesting thing is, and Tony's had a bunch of columns on this. He's had he didn't win his Pulitzer, but he's had a bunch of columns on the conflicts and and really a big part of it has been the secrecy and how we don't know really what's going on. And Alvin's absolutely right. It really reminds one of Better Together in a lot of way in the tone of this thing. And the narrative is interesting because Francis Slate claims that late in 2015, RFT did a great cover story on this about a year and a half ago, that somehow a guy who had left the Obama administration came to him. He was working for these investors in Australia with this idea to privatize it. And in his narrative, Francis saying, well, we don't have the money to pursue this. I'll go to Rex Sinquefield and ask him to help us. That was what he said he did. The interesting thing is the Show Me Institute had articles that year before this advocating privatization of the airport. Now, maybe Rex didn't know about them, but no, I'm just saying. I'm saying.
Okay.
But my point is, this really does not feel transparent at all.
Well, let me ask you this,
organic.
Wendy Weiss. Do you think that Better Together, which we've been mentioning and was funded by Rex Sinquefield, is dead? Will Ross is a dean at Washington University, and a couple weeks ago he came out and really criticized it every which way from Sunday. I don't think there's any chance any politician is going to bring it back. What do you think?
I think that as long as you have those very deep, determined pockets, then I think other politicians. I think it is in a medically induced coma. I think that Better Together is in a medically induced coma, and I think they're going to look at the patient and figure out where they went wrong with this particular patient. And they're going to come back, and this is not over. Anybody who thinks this is over is
I think
overly optimistic.
Well,
I think Wendy is absolutely right. I do think we need to talk about, and I know it's been a topic that's controversial, and I think if any good came out of the Better Together project, I do think there is a renewed chance to talk about the city and county in some fashion reunifying. And I think it should be pretty minimalistic, but whether the city would be part of the county as a university city in Clayton or Kirkwood, some fashion of reunification that would be, I think you start very minimalistically, but that I think psychologically would help us a lot. If
So
there were two
you would
counties.
eliminate the city's county offices?
Yes, I would. And I think it's something we should talk about.
Okay,
at least.
boy,
and
you have
it's not the
big
Ray
problem
Hartman.
with that, Ray.
Well, I think, I'm not saying that I'm going to do a better together, but I
Eliminating
think
the
we should
circuit
talk about
attorney's
it.
office.
I think we should
But-
talk about
but we
that.
are
Yeah,
turning
absolutely.
into sort of a.
We did try
think
that.
we should do that.
I think it's been so much poison. I don't think anyone's going to touch it for a long time.
And it would have to be a vote, and I
of
just
course
don't
it
say it wouldn't pass. And
Right.
you know,
But you could combine. We don't need 2 police academies. We don't need 2 fire academies. I mean, that's the low-hanging fruit. We probably don't even need 2 health departments, right? So we could start there.
maybe, but I mean, I think the people have to decide.
But
that.
what is happening in
I
University
live in the county,
City
and I want
with
my own stuff.
Costco?
I'm not saying that. I'm not saying this that I really, this is my personal feeling, but I could see, I understand. No, I live in the county. I want my own stuff.
My own police academy?
Yeah, maybe.
Well, I would
ours
think-
is better than theirs.
Look, we do have it.
I don't know.
Okay,
Oh,
we
based
do have,
on what's been going on in the St. Louis Police Department over the last couple years.
Well-
what are they trained? What are they getting trained to do?
What
Yeah, the
Charlie's-
hiring, definitely.
Charlie, you're right about. We already have a major case squad. We do some of this, and you're absolutely right that we need to do more of it at a minimum. We have a major case squad that unifies them. We have Regis that unifies them. We have that 911 is unified between the police, between city and county. So there is a template, and we have other structures like MSD and the Convention Visitors Bureau. We only have one of those. There used to be 2 in the city and county. There's a lot of precedent for this. But I think and the Zoo Museum District is another one. I think we need I happen to disagree with you guys. I think we ought to reunify, and I live in the county, but I think it would be in everyone's interest to start thinking
With a vote.
together. That's
Okay.
what I think.
Hey, Bill, I want to ask you about the getting back to the Stanley Cup victory, and you had a special edition of the Post-Dispatch that came out today, and it was so successful it sold out. And is that just a sign of how popular the sports section is today, or is that a cardinal sin because you should always print more copies?
Well, I'm surprised we didn't have more copies. I remember when Mark McGwire hit his 62nd home run, people flocked down to the newspaper and were buying copies. It was just a very cool thing. And I went to the newspaper today, and there was a sign on the door, no single copy sold, no issue sold here. And I thought, my gosh, it seems stern.
Yeah.
And for some reason, they didn't print enough. And I don't know what the reasoning was, but it surprised me.
The places I do buy the Post, I don't get it at the house.
Alvin.
I know, but the 2 places that I get it were out by 7 o'clock. So I did the traditional American thing. I stole one off somebody's lawn.
No, you
that's
didn't.
nice.
I did, but it was my mom. And I called her.
Now you're dead meat.
No, I called her.
No
I said,
bail.
I
No
called her.
bail.
I called her and I said, Mom,
No bail.
I stole your paper. So don't blame it on the
She is
neighbors
gonna
or anything.
ground
That video
you.
clip will be out there, Albert, when
Yeah.
you say, I stole it from somebody's lawn. If you ever run for office,
Yeah.
that'll
Rightfully
stop
so.
you right there.
Well,
My mom
overall,
will pay my bail.
Oh, sure she will.
hey, of all the things that happened the past couple of weeks, can you think of something that really kind of touched you?
Oh, I mentioned it earlier. Like Chris Kerber was really, really good at the end of that game, and I think he kind of summed it up. And he basically, I'm paraphrasing, but said like, "This is for real. This is just happened." And I think that's how all of us felt. Like this really just all happened. And a Game 7, and having to win a Game 7 earlier, and winning after the illegal hand pass, and it really just the playoffs. Never mind they were in last place on January 3rd, but just went on. I was in Lawrence for a spring football game when the playoffs started. And I'm thinking like, man, that was the second weekend in April, and now here we are in June.
I think the Blues are like the community that they play in. They get knocked down, and then they're scrappy. They fought their way back. I think the Layla, the heart of that Layla Anderson, and how everybody, you see this Colton Pareko, this big, huge hockey player, telling her to kiss the cup. I mean, just so many memories like that.
I agree.
That are going to
and
glow.
I think
I would ask. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I was going to say, there's always been, such a baseball town, but I've never seen as many people connected to it as has been with this hockey.
I
I mean,
think
you
that's
drive
right.
around,
Yeah.
you see Blues flags everywhere.
Yeah.
I run into people who I never thought were sports fans wearing like a Gloria hat.
Yeah.
And I just thought this is really
Well,
cool.
and it's what
Yeah.
Alvin said earlier. There's an emotional connection to this because it was so improbable and it's been so long. And Layla story was just, she is an inspiration. And that, you could tell that isn't some, that's not public relations. It's real. And the other thing is Charles Glenn.
Yes.
Oh, my
yes,
God.
yes.
He got.
You stole
Yes.
my
What
thunder.
a great guy.
Yeah.
And he's retiring. He's got some issues he's dealing with MS. But
Well,
he is a great guy.
And Yale
this
Hollander,
is a good field.
our
good,
buddy,
good field.
our buddy
Good
Yale
stuff.
Hollander has suggested that maybe Charles Glenn, who did sing with the Fifth Dimension, should be on the St. Louis Walk of Fame.
I think it's a
Of
great
course he
idea.
That's a
should be.
good idea.
Absolutely.
Hey, let's find out what the viewers had to say about last week's stellar broadcast. Mona Davenport wrote, I typically enjoy your show, but when everyone cuts the other person off, I can't hear anyone make a point. I agree, Ms. Davenport. Kate Martin wrote, Wendy was right about waiting for facts before assuming the flag burning was done by someone who is hating gays. Not being a straight person myself, I have never experienced a hostile anti-gay climate in St. Louis. Thanks, Wendy. Dale Cannon wrote, bankruptcies have skyrocketed in Missouri with riverboat gambling. So how many bankruptcies will result from sports betting in Illinois? Another great point. Thank you, Mr. Cannon. You can write us care of KETC, 3655 Olive Street, St. Louis, Missouri, 63108. Don't forget those emails and those tweets, hashtag DonnieBrookSTL. Thanks so much for joining us. Don't forget you can always listen again by following Apple, Spotify, Google Play, and TuneIn. And, of course, watching reruns of this program on the 9 Network. Thanks a lot for joining us at Donnie Bash, September 26th. We'll see you there, as well as next week. Make it a good one, and go Blues!
Donnybrook is made possible by the members of the 9 Network.